I received the suggestion to do a video on Into the Wild in my comment section, and Paramount Plus has also been telling me to see it for the past few months. So I decided to give it a watch, especially after seeing the online reviews for this movie. There were a few things that I noticed about the cinematography and character development that are really unique and impressive about this film that I want to dive into. Now, there will be spoilers, first of all. Also, I want to note that I'm strictly talking about the movie character here, not the actual real-life Chris McCandless. I know that there's some debate around whether or not we romanticize or glamorize his endeavors too much. But for the purpose of this video, I'm going to be strictly talking about the filmmaking and writing techniques. And while you obviously shouldn't go out and emulate the things that led to this man's death, the movie speaks to parts of our humanity that we've been progressively losing in modern society. Anyway, let's get into it. One of the strongest aspects of this movie is how it takes the viewer on a journey with the main character. I noticed about 30 minutes in that I felt completely immersed in the different environments and landscapes. There's a variety of different settings: deserts, forests, the Alaskan tundra, the beaches of the Pacific Northwest, a small town in South Dakota, and the city of Los Angeles. And the way this film so accurately captures the essence of these diverse locations is really special. I've spent a lot of time in places that are similar to many of the ones in the film. Coincidentally, like Chris, I also lived in the Annandale, Virginia area, and I also drove across the country starting from the East Coast. And like Chris, I also went through the desert plains of Arizona and up the West Coast. These are some of the photos that I took along the way. I went to a forest up in Northern California near a place called Whiskey Town. My love for Scotch and bourbon may or may not have influenced my decision. And this is roughly the same region where Chris meets Jan and Rainey in the film. I also went to a beach on the coast of Washington State that's about 80 miles north from where this scene was shot. I've been to many small towns in Washington and Oregon, and while they aren't quite Carthage, South Dakota, the vibe is pretty similar. And this film captures the essence and feeling of being in these environments so well. It's often incredibly difficult to do because you're taking a physical location, a tangible environment that you are completely surrounded by, and translating it to a flat, two-dimensional screen. So you'll often see shots like this that are visually realistic, but they don't really capture the feeling and the emotion of actually being there, because these videos feel sterile and kind of lifeless. Or you'll see super cinematic footage that is emotionally gripping, but then loses all sense of visual realism. It looks nothing like the actual location. So in this case, you need cinematography that accurately portrays what these areas look like and captures how they feel at the same time. And the shots from Into the Wild thread the needle really well. They're just stylized enough to be evocative and reflect the underlying emotion of these locations without feeling fake and too stylized. Anyway, I could probably do a full video on how this movie immerses you in these various environments. For example, this one scene mixes in a wide-angle shot, a close-up macro shot, and a medium-width shot in the span of a few seconds, allowing for the scene to capture the full experience of actually being there. The lighting for this forest scene is also great, and as someone who's done a lot of nature photography, I can appreciate how difficult it is to get forests right. The only complaint I have is the copious amount of slow motion in this film, but I'll give it a pass since the movie's almost 20 years old. But anyway, the visually immersive nature of this movie makes it feel like it isn't just about Chris. It invites us to be in it as well, especially the part of ourselves that resonates with the desire to be unconstrained by consumerism, relational expectations, or simply the 9-to-5 job and the lifestyle that comes with it. This movie inspired me to take a few more risks, to worry less about physical possessions, and to spend more time in the natural world, gathering new experiences. This film was a welcome reminder of my own humanity, especially in this modern American ecosystem that often forces us into the sterile safety and certainty of life in our 1,500 square foot boxes. Also, the fact that this movie doesn't contain a lot of dialogue adds to its immersiveness. You aren't watching characters interact with each other as much as you're being pulled into these deep, ever-shifting environments. I compared the amount of dialogue in this film to a couple of other acclaimed biopics. So The Aviator has about 90 words of dialogue per minute, and Love and Mercy has around 80 words. By contrast, Into the Wild only has around 55 words of dialogue per minute. The focus is very much on the visual storytelling, which pulls you in and invites you to be almost an active participant in the story. And this sort of leads me to another aspect I noticed. There's a very palpable sense of detachment and aloofness with the lead character. And this is reflected in how little he speaks in the movie. He's in almost every shot, and he does meet a lot of people along the way, and yet he has a lot less dialogue than you might expect. There's a sense of distance between him and the other characters. When he does speak, he's very guarded about what he shares with others. He never fully lets anyone in. The other characters don't even know his real name. He's always leaving in the middle of the night or moving on before others are ready to see him go. And it also feels like there's a boundary between him and the audience itself, because he's rarely the one narrating his own story. It's almost always his sister, and she doesn't always fully understand him either. So by contrast, in the movie Limitless, Bradley Cooper's character uses narration to detail his own precise experience with the drug he takes, as well as his own thoughts and motivations behind his actions. That doesn't happen on Into the Wild. In Stranger Than Fiction, the narration is done by a separate character, much like Into the Wild. It features Emma Thompson narrating Will Ferrell's life, but she's omniscient. She knows all of the lead character's thoughts and feelings. Whereas in Into the Wild, the narrator is often speculating and even confused by Chris at times. In The Wolf of Wall Street, DiCaprio's narration is starkly candid and honest. It gives us a deep sense of the very nature of his character. The narration reinforces and accentuates how opulent, shameless, and unrepentant he is. But in Into the Wild, the narration from both the lead character and his sister is abstracted, not straightforward. It's poetic, it's literary. And while this adds a level of artistry to the film, it also adds another layer of separation between the main character and the audience. So there's this wall being put up between Chris and everyone he encounters, and also the audience itself. He never answers Jan's question about his family. He doesn't reach out to his own sister. He tries to leave Ron's house in the middle of the night, and he more or less rejects Ron's adoption offer. In all of his relationships, there's this sense that he's constantly negotiating how much he divulges or lets them in. But here's the part I love. He still has a profound effect on people nonetheless. His aloof nature and transient tendencies don't make his connections any less meaningful or impactful, and I think that's a wonderful element of the plot. Our modern Western societies place such a high value on transparency and self-expression, but I really like that the lead character of this movie subverts both of those expectations. And the movie certainly isn't glorifying this, because it all seems to stem from a difficult and often abusive relationship with his parents. But it also isn't saying that these things completely prohibit him from having deep and meaningful relationships. And despite the character never fully overcoming the things that plagued him, he was able to live a life of freedom and happiness and positively impact the people he met along the way. And I like the fact that he's a complicated character. There's not a clear resolution to his story, and in the end it's a bit tragic. But the ending is also one of acceptance and even gratitude. And the nuance of the character really shines through the non-linear format of the movie. It's constantly switching between the Alaska story arc and the months leading up to it, with some flashbacks or references to his childhood sprinkled in between. And what you end up with is this collage of different moods and emotions, all sort of mixed together, one right after the other. So you may have a moment of complete triumph and youthful exuberance, immediately followed by a scene drenched in the isolation of the frozen Alaskan tundra, or moments of breathtaking wonder juxtaposed with a callback to his tumultuous upbringing. And the final scene of his death in Alaska is interrupted by Chris leaving Ron's house, which could possibly be seen as a contrast of two very different lives. We see that Chris will die young, having lived a full life, and we see that Ron has lived a long life, but perhaps not to its fullest potential. The scene ends with one final goodbye, then a montage of the people Chris has impacted in his short life, an appropriate way of wrapping up the story. Then it cuts back to Alaska, where we know what happens. Now, I've only watched this movie 3 times so far, but I feel like it gets better with each rewatch, and I'm sure there's a lot of things that I still haven't noticed about it. But those are just my thoughts after a handful of viewings. Let me know what you like about this movie, and I hope y'all also get a chance to go outside and touch some grass this week. I'll see you in the next video.